Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to check as the panel here. Patrick Brown. That's a yes.
Here. Yep.
Gavin Malone.
Here.
Michael Savage.
Here.
Shirley Forshaw.
Here.
Grania Powell. Grania Powell.
I'm here.
Grania, we're here. Okay.
Yeah.
And Brian Cleland, of course. Yeah.
Here.
Okay. Right. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to all our media friends as well. It's very important that we get out the message that we want to get out tonight, which is positivity and working together to bring this park, the Albert Basin Park project, to make it happen sooner rather than later. But let's go back and explain why we're here today. First of all, we had a meeting which I chaired for 2020. Just turn my phone off. We had a meeting which 2020 invited us all to on Wednesday evening, the 14th of April past. Now, it was a fact-finding meeting, and it was all about the regeneration program in Newry City. And we talked extensively during the meeting. Some local councillors outlined, either as an independent or a member of a party, they outlined where they stood in regard to the regeneration program, and there was huge input from the councillors. Certainly, there was various members of the public expressing concerns over funding, timescale, design, incorporating greenways with our waterways, and also the history and the lack of transparency in terms of letting the general public know what's going on. In the main, the councillors took away and noted what they had been told. And they also recognized that they were all in agreement that we needed to move and get things done a lot faster than we are. However, they all did shield slightly behind the fact that there was a consultation going on at the moment, and they were waiting on the results of that in June. So we don't know where that is at the moment, but what we do know from our report from Paul Welsh in the Newry Reporter, one and other media outlets, that we had a situation where Patrick Brown and Roisin Mulgrew had a bit of a ding-dong in the council chamber over our previous meeting. So at least we do know that some people were listening. But first of all, before I get to housekeeping and introduce our panel, I want to bring Brian Cleland in, and Brian's going to clear up who was invited to this and who wasn't, and what happened when he did invite various people. So Brian Cleland from 2020, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thanks, Kevin. So just very briefly, don't want to spend too much time on this, but just to give people some of the background to this meeting, how we came to be here with the panel that we have, and so on. So initially, our plan had been to invite the two co-chairs of the Newry City Centre Regeneration Programme Board. That's Councillors Roisin Mulgrew from Sinn Féin and Pete Byrne from SDLP. And to be honest, I was disappointed. Both of those councillors declined to attend tonight. And to be honest, I'm saying disappointed and a bit puzzled by the responses I got. So I just because a few people have asked, where Sinn Féin are, for example, tonight, and so on. So I just want to clear up, make sure that we're totally transparent in terms of how we're inviting and treating people equally. So when we invited Roisin, she replied that the council had invited or appointed design consultants who were due to report back in early June. She felt it was premature to meet at this time. However, she also said that once the consultants are presented to the board, that the council will be holding engagements with all stakeholders. So I replied to Roisin to clarify. I said, does that mean that you're unwilling to participate in a meeting with Newry 2020 at this stage? And got no response. So that was disappointing, obviously. We invited Sinn Féin to send alternative representatives tonight, but they weren't able to find anybody who could speak this evening.
Just stop you there, Brian. Could I ask everybody to mute, please, because we're getting a little bit of feedback left, right, and centre there while Brian's trying to talk. So if everybody would mute, I will invite you to unmute whenever I ask you to speak. So if you'd all stay like that, it'll be a lot quieter Thank you very much. Right, Brian, go ahead.
Yes, and then so we'd also invited Councillor Pete Byrne, who's also the co-chair of the programme board and therefore responsible for the delivery of the park. And Pete had replied that he wanted to speak to the programme board first about it. I'm not exactly clear why. He said it was because he had equal standing with the programme board members. When that meeting took place last Thursday, when I asked Pete how the programme board had responded to the request, he said that the members wanted to have all the members wanted to have a voice, not just the chairs, and that there was a meeting happening on the 21st of June. And you know, again, I'm a bit puzzled by that because other people have told me that our invitation wasn't discussed, and there isn't going to be a meeting in June. So it's all a bit confusing, a bit disappointing. But you know, having said that, you know, we've a very good panel tonight. You know, very grateful to the representatives and other people who've volunteered to participate, and I'm sure we'll have a great discussion. So just wanted to make that sort of open and transparent before we move on.
So you did invite the co-chairs to the meeting, and both declined. And I think we have a representation from the SDLP. So we're going to kick off with the SDLP first of all, because I want to get the views of the councillors that are on board tonight on what you've said there. Michael Savage, first of all, please.
Yes, Kevin. Well, I'm very happy to be here and advocate on behalf of the park, as Brian and everybody associated with Newry 2020 and associated with this park will know. Myself and Councillor Gary Stokes have been very strong advocates of the park from way back, certainly from Gary's position from 2011, where I know we had it in our party literature going around the doors trying to promote the need for a park at the Albert Basin.
Yeah, can I just stop you there? I only want a quick comment on the fact that your colleague declined the invitation. What happened there?
Well, the SDLP didn't decline the invitation. I'm here tonight. We discussed it as a group, and I was happy to go, and I'm here. And
okay.
Answer any questions. My record in the park, as is the party's record in the park, is there for all to see.
Okay, Michael, thank you for that. Patrick Brown.
Yes, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, it's
we're specifically talking about the co-chairs refusing to come to the meeting. You know.
Yes, absolutely. First comment I'll say though is thank you to Kevin and Brian for pulling tonight together, and also a bit less of a manel tonight, although no better in terms of political representatives of the female persuasion, unfortunately. But as we know, it was turned down by certain co-chairs of the Newry City Centre Regeneration Project, and I think this meeting would have benefited from having them there, given they are ultimately responsible for delivering this project. I think it's intensely disappointing as well that Sinn Féin, the largest party in the district with 2 MPs, 5 MLAs and 16 councillors, couldn't find any time to send a single representative along tonight. I think it's very disappointing. My recollection of what happened at the last Newry City Centre Regeneration Project Board meeting that Brian was referencing, in terms of a discussion of a public meeting, there was no discussion regarding this public meeting. Pete Byrne didn't bring a discussion on that back to the NCCR board. There was a discussion around a council run and led public meeting and whether that would happen at some point or not. My understanding is that has been pushed back for now until we can properly interrogate the results of the ongoing consultation. But to my knowledge, and Gavin can maybe keep me right here, there was no liaison or consultation with NCCR board members regarding tonight's public meeting.
Okay, let's go to Gavin Malone, who's an independent councillor. Gavin, what's your view on this?
Well, who turns up or who doesn't turn up is irrelevant to me. I'm here as an independent councillor. My priority has been from day one a state-of-the-art park, and I'm all for regeneration. But when it comes to the park, it's certainly my priority. And I'm pushing forward recently for £800 million levelling up, and it's a perfect opportunity for our council to get £7 million, hopefully from Whitehall.
Okay, stop you there, Gavin. That's fine. Okay, so we've sort of got a slight opinion from some of the councillors as to why the co-chairs have refused to go to the meeting. They don't know they're here to do a job tonight, and we thank them for it. We got to introduce our panel tonight before we go anywhere. First of all, I'm Kevin McAllister, and I've been asked to chair this meeting totally as an independent person in the chair with no affiliation to any political party presently. The team tonight, the panel, we're going to introduce them in no particular order. Patrick Brown, you heard earlier on from the Alliance Party. Gavin Malone, as you see on screen right now, an independent. Michael Savage from the SDLP. We have Dr. Shirley Forshaw, who's a GP in Newry. Grania Powell from Sticky Fingers, again, working with young people in the Newry and Mourne area in the arts, and Brian Cleland from 2020. So we're going to start with the panel, and then we're going to move on to a few questions from various people who have asked to make a question tonight. We're certainly welcoming that. We also have various people from the floor who may want to talk later on. So if you feel the need that you want to chirp in, let us know. Just pop us a message there on the side. You'll see it, the chat side, and we bring you on when we possibly can. So let's go to our panel first of all, and the update here is the park, the Albert Basin Park. Where are we right now? What's happening with the park? Let's go to our councillors first of all. Let's go to Michael Savage from the SDLP.
Yes, Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, Chair. Well, what I can say is that we are very much in the stage of entering, after many long months, maybe years potentially, of procrastination and delay. We are on the verge of action and delivery on the park. And as the person who has proposed that we have phase 1 of the park delivered by the end of this council term, work will start as soon as we go through the number of stages that we have to go through. The next stage that will be coming to us will be the delivery of the design consultants report, which will be coming to us, I believe, in early June. It will be considered in detail by councillors. I will be strongly advocating that that is rolled out as well for input from the stakeholder group. As somebody and as the person who proposed the wide-ranging consultation that we've had on this project, it's very important that this project starts and finishes with the people, that the people are able to shape this, which they have done in probably the most wide-ranging consultation process our council has ever had. The feedback was incredible, the engagement levels were incredible. That adds down to the promotion that Newry 2020 and other stakeholder groups did at the time. But the design phase is coming back now. I would expect that when we get the design report back from the design consultants, it will embody an awful lot of what was in the report, because that was a remit that the council gave those consultants at the time. When that comes back, we will be looking at the costings, we'll be looking at planning, and then when we get that in front of us, we'll be looking at budgets, and we will also be looking at rolling it out for funding options on the basis of we will then be in a position to formulate an outline business case. We need a business case to go and seek funding, and that'll be based on, for the first time, we will actually have tangible costings as to what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and what it's going to look like. But I have made a very tangible proposal to council, which was agreed by all councillors, that we would have phase 1 of the park. And the reason and rationale behind that was that we would have phase 1 of the park delivered in this council term, because that's what we set out to do in this council, was to deliver the park within this council term. I'm delighted that all the political parties have now come on board, because that was the SDLP's mantra, that we wanted to build a people's park that would not become political, that would become something that everybody would buy into from all parties. And I'm delighted, despite some people coming to the table very late, that we now have everybody apparently singing off the same hymn sheet to deliver this park. Phase 1, what does it look like? Phase 1 is about getting this park to the point of no return, where we have a park and we will develop it and grow it as our city, as our population grows, as the needs and demands change coming generation. And phase 1 will effectively be the greening and capping of the site, the securing of the site, the linking of the pathways to the greenway, and the development of a regional play park. That takes the park to the point of no return, where we have a green open space. And I would believe the further phases that will follow that will depend on the funding levels we get in from the funding trawl that we do. And also I'm preempting what's going to come out from the design team's report, but I would envisage that they will talk about different phases and introducing certain things to the park as time progresses.
Okay, can I stop you there?
Just let me finish. If and when the finance is available, we move quicker. But this is about ensuring that the park starts and we have a 15-acre site that will be developed as a park. And that was the rationale behind that proposal. And I fully intend us, to my council colleagues, including Gary Stokes and others who've been advocating this park for years, that we end up with the park being delivered by the end of this council term.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Patrick Brown, do you concur there? Do you agree with what Michael said?
Look, I mean, no one would question Councillor Savage's commitment to the park. I don't think there's any question of that. But I also don't think there's any question that, as you know, Kevin, you don't need a history lesson in this. Almost 4 years ago in 2017, there was an Alliance Party motion that was seconded by Councillor Gary Stokes, Jarlath Tinnelly and David Taylor, a cross-party motion that got unanimous support to back a park. Almost 4 years ago, and how much further on are we? It's shocking that far down the line, we're only now getting a design consultant's report, hopefully coming in June, which I very much.
But is that not, just cut across you here, is that not because we couldn't get all party agreement? Is that not the reason why the delay has happened? Or
there was substantial delays where a Sinn Féin chair kicked it into an obscure working committee that has never happened to a motion before up until that point. And there was various battles at the SPNR committee to get it on the agenda. And I have to say, Councillor Savage went to task on that. I think he might have been chair or something of the committee at the time. And he was actually the one who made sure it was debated that night. So it was team effort. It was a cross-party effort. Some parties were slower at coming on board. I think Councillor Savage made reference to that. But the fact is, we can go back and talk about what happened 4 years ago, but my main worry is we are not far enough along now. And one of the main concerns I have is officers are starting to look at funds to draw in external funding to help support paying for this park. So Gavin mentioned the Levelling Up Fund, and he's done some great work around that and bringing a motion on it. There's also a DFI Blue and Green Fund. I'm not 100% on the detail of it. It's been mentioned by officers. But these funds want shovel-ready projects that are ready to go. And we are not at that stage yet. We are far behind that. So we run the risk of actually letting that funding slip through our fingers because we haven't pulled our finger out as a council and got this project shovel-ready.
Patrick Brown, Michael talked about the design report and rolling it out to the stakeholders. Surely that would be welcome.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, wouldn't say anything against that. 100%. I hope the community are as involved as possible in the co-production of the park. Absolutely.
Right,
but
let's move.
We need to move quickly here on this, Kevin. And the fact is that the park has been treated with completely double standards compared to other projects within the council.
Okay, party politics here. I'm concerned about that tonight. I don't want that to happen. Let's talk about the park and let's talk about the positivity here, because that's what we want. Gavin Malone, Patrick Brown's talked about funding there, and he said you're very involved in looking for some funding in regards to the park and so on. What's your view on all of this? You've heard Councillor Savage, you've heard Councillor Brown.
Yeah, Kevin, I completely agree with Councillor Savage and Councillor Brown. I think the general consensus is that things are proceeding very slowly. And the motion that I put forward, we need to start a plan for money available, which is available. We need to be a lot quicker and sharper. So, I think that the reality is that everyone I've spoken to, the park is a priority and certainly not the Civic Centre. And we all do want regeneration, but the park has to proceed quicker than it is at this moment in time. And that's a serious concern for everyone I'm speaking to. So the Levelling Up is a fantastic opportunity to receive several £1 million. And we need to be on the ball very quickly. It's going through ERT at this moment in time. And I believe that the first phase of money to be given out, there's a possibility we could have missed it. because it's went through ERT. So we just need to be on the ball a lot sharper.
Okay, Michael Savage, let's bring you back in here, Michael. You've heard what the other two gentlemen have had to say. I just want to be fair here that you've a right to reply there on a few issues. That you've come out with a plan there, and you've talked about the design report and involving the stakeholders. You've talked about costings, planning, the budget, as has Patrick and also Gavin, in terms of certainly the budget seems to be a big stumbling block for everyone. Where are we with that, and why have we not moved faster than we actually have? Good point from Patrick Brown, perhaps.
Let's deal with the reality. We are where councillors have agreed to date. We're at the point where councillors so far agreed. Every stage of moving this project along has been based on proposals, which if, the minutes of the councils will show. Because I'm our party representative on the SPNR committee, I have proposed on behalf of my party, on behalf of those like Paddy and like Gavin, who have been pushing this proposal from day one about getting this park built. We are on timelines now that we've agreed to a number of months ago, where we first of all pushed very hard to get the consultation. Again, something that I proposed in the SPNR, and on the back of that response, we then appointed design consultants to take the feedback that was there and deliver it. They're coming back to us in June. What I expect is a summer of activity where we as councillors take on board, engage with the stakeholders and agree on where we go forward in relation to the budget, in relation to the business case. Now, Gavin's right to be looking funding. We're all looking funding. I hear even other political parties saying that they met people about funding, but the bottom line is this: funding applications can't be met until an outline business case is done. That's the next important stage in this development. That once we get agreement on where we're going to go forward on the business case, based on the design that's come back, real costings probably for the first time, based on real engagement from the public. Because as I've said all along, this is the people's park, and we got to build what the people want, and within the parameters of what's deliverable within the council terms, as and when what budgets are available. But I want this to be a project that should, by its very nature, be supported externally, because there are so many funds out there that we can be tapping into in relation to healthy lifestyle, in relation to the environment. They're there to be tapped into, and I think that we should be aiming to have the overriding finance of this project coming from external funding, because that means that something that even down the line when we want to expand the park or put something new into it, we could tap into those funds. This is about developing a green open space that is the lungs of our city. And the tangible benefits that will come from this are way beyond an open space. It will attract people to come and live and work in our city. It'll attract businesses to locate here because it'll be a nice place to live, and people will feel that there's somewhere to go at lunchtime, etc., etc.
Okay, Michael.
I spoke to a guy in Intertrade Ireland, and he actually said, do not underestimate the economic driver that this park will be, way beyond the health and environmental benefits, because it will be something that will sell Newry.
Okay, I'll stop you there. I think we're all in agreement with that, and having listened to Patrick Brown before, and certainly Gavin Malone, I don't think they would disagree with you at all there. Let's bring Brian Cleland in. And Brian, the big concern I have here is you've got three councillors who are on tonight, and they're not afraid to speak out and say what they think. Patrick Brown, Gavin Malone, Michael Savage. Big concern is the co-chairs, Roisin Mulgrew and Pete Byrne, are not here tonight. They should be perhaps here to talk to the general public, because that would be much appreciated. But where do you stand with 2020? And also, Michael talked about involving the stakeholders. Have you all been involved enough? The question probably will be a big no, but I'm going to ask that question first of all, Brian.
Yeah, you're right. The answer is no. We haven't been involved since the working group was closed down. There's been effectively no involvement of anybody outside of the council, much to our frustration. But I think we can come back to that later, Kevin. I think it's great to see the positivity and around the project from the councillors here tonight. But I noticed that Mark Cunningham had asked some pertinent questions around specific timing of delivery. Maybe we could bring Mark in and let him ask a question and see if we can sort of drill into the details.
Yeah, we'll certainly do that, but let's stick with the panel for the moment. I want to know where you stand 2020.
Well, where I stand is there, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, there's no plan for delivery. That's the bottom line.
Simple as that.
We've asked for it. We've been asked for it since early 2018. We had a plan. The plan disappeared. It was replaced with a sheet of paper with 4 or 5 lines on it. So I believe the councillors here tonight want to see a park delivered, but the fact of the matter is the officers don't have a plan for delivery.
All right.
And no project can be delivered of this scale can be delivered.
Okay. No delivery. There's no plan. Mark Cunningham, let's bring you in at this stage in terms of project delivery and timelines. You have a question.
Hello.
Yes.
Can everybody hear me? Apologies for the mask. I'm commuting back from Dublin on the train, so
okay, Mark.
Apologies. Yeah, I just wanted to get some detail in terms of anticipated timelines for delivery. So far, everything that I've heard, there's not really any detail. And I work in the university sector, and for example, write research proposals. And when I write those, in those documents, you have milestones and you have deliverables. And for a project like this, it just really surprises me that there are no sort of dates. Now, obviously, I'm not looking for specific days or months, but I think it would be good for someone that's a parent of children, someone that relocated back to Newry after 20 years of being away, that parents have some sense of a date when they can actually take their children into this park, because we all know the benefits from a mental health point of view. And given that we've had a pandemic where we have a tsunami of mental health issues that's going to be coming down on top of us, the ability to deliver this park, if our elected representatives and councillors cannot do this, then I would say that it's either a case of benign neglect or negligence. And I think citizens are getting really frustrated and annoyed. We want this park delivered. We need it not only for our children, but for future generations of people that want to live and work in Newry.
Okay, Mark, thank you for that question. Let's go to our councillors. I think we'll start off with Michael Savage, because Michael did touch on this. Michael, first of all, I think the design report you're waiting on in June, that's the start, isn't it?
Well, I did refer to an initial timeline. I'm the only councillor who saw it and got a firm commitment from officials in the chamber, and gladly was supported by all the other councillors in that we have a commitment in council to deliver phase 1 of the park. And I know some people were frustrated at the fact that we talked about phasing the park, but I am a realist. I saw the challenges we've had, as people have referred to here, and trying to get it this far for 4 years. I wanted to get this park to the point of no return. And the point of no return is in May 2023, the capping, the greening of the site, the linking of the walkways, and the securing of the site, and the development of a regional play park. That's what was proposed by me in council, agreed by council, and put forward for officers to action. And I presume that that's going to come back in some shape or form from the design team, because that's part of the remit that they were given from council, and the other councillors can agree with me or disagree with me in that, but that's the first timeline we have. So I would appreciate that people are anxious and wanting to get this to happen, but we have certain hurdles we have to go through. In relation to the capping and greening of the site, there had to be investigations carried out to make sure that there had been no further deterioration of the site. That is reclaimed land, and we had to make sure that all safety measures, environmental issues were covered. And that's part of what will come out in this report. As I said at the start of this meeting, and I think it's very important that because we've got to this stage, there's been enough negativity about this project to date. I think what we've got to do is to say, right, this is the springboard for the development of this. Let's be positive and push this thing on. And what we have done is we have said that phase 1 will be completed by the end of this council term, which in terms mean May 2023. That's what we as a council are committed to. And I will draw my last breath in that at the end of this council term to make sure that that's delivered. as the proposer of it and as somebody who had been frustrated as anybody else in relation to the delivery of this. I expect then what we get from the report that'll come from the design team is what's doable in phase 1, the costing in that, and we move to phase 2. Now, that's what I believe to be the logical approach to this. That creates our green space. It gives a firm commitment to develop that site to a park, and it also has play facilities on it. So we could be looking at other aspects as well, which is the woodland element of it, the green open space element of it, and the play element of it. And
Okay.
So those things will all be covered, in what I believe, in phase 1.
Okay, Michael, thank you for that. Patrick Brown, 2023, that's 6 years from 2017. Will it take another 6 years for phase 2?
I was just thinking that, Kevin. I sincerely hope so. And I think, Mark was talking about writing academic proposals. And I'm sure whenever he writes a proposal, he doesn't just say sometime this year or sometime within the next 2 years. He probably has to have a timeline around it. I know when I'm writing up my PhD thesis, I have a timeline of when I'm doing chapters and when I'm getting my methodology in and my research done. And it's broken down month by month. It's not just, sometime in the next 2 years. And what I want to see from officers is a clear-cut timeline that they cannot easily deviate from, and if they do, they need to give good reasons why to councillors as to why they're going off track, that will actually guarantee that the park is delivered in phase 1 or however you want to structure it within this council term. But here's something really important, Kevin. We're talking about having a shovel-ready plan to go to external funders, right? No external funder is going to touch this project unless the council puts its money where its mouth is and puts adequate budget aside in its rates, in its capital programme for this park. At the minute, there is a paltry £150,000 in the capital programme for the Albert Basin Park. That is not enough. I proposed at the SPNR committee, I believe it was this January, before the rates were signed off in March it was this year, that we increased that budget to 1.5 million. And that would have been a significant gesture towards getting a park delivered beyond no return, as Michael says, in this term. Unfortunately, that proposal was voted down by most councillors, which I think was a missed opportunity. Now, the reason we were given by officers as to why, and I think this maybe scared a few councillors off as to why they couldn't back that proposal, is because we were told that there was no business case for the Albert Basin Park. Now, leaving aside the fact that they've had the best of 4 years to develop that business case, we have 35 million set aside for a project. We had 35 million set aside for a project in Newry for new offices in the theatre, which until very recently had no business case. The money was set aside in the capital programme before the business case was in place. So again, we have a perfect example of a double standard between the Albert Basin Park project and the rest of the Newry City Centre regeneration project.
So let's be clear about this. The funding for the park is 150,000 from the council.
Currently, that's what I understand is in the capital programme, yes.
And for the new offices, it's 35 million.
The new offices are an element of that. There's about 15 million for offices altogether, about 12 for the civic centre element, and 3 million for private sector offices on top of that.
Okay, let's go to Gavin Malone. And Gavin, the question there, you heard what Michael said, you heard what Patrick saying, and Michael saying, let's get the outline design down so as at the point of no return, we have to continue with it. But is there a danger with lack of funding that it stays as an outline design and doesn't go to phase 2?
I think what we're saying, Kevin, is that with the design team hopefully finished for June, as Michael said, phase 1, 2 years down the line, well, it's up to our senior management on the ball and try and draw in funding. Because if they can draw in £7 million or whatever it may be, we need to get the ball rolling and even go further than phase 1 within the next 2 years. If we get more and more money, then we can move.
But you heard what Patrick said, 150,000 is not going to, it's not going to impress any external funders, really, is it?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Surely that's a problem. Let's go back to Michael Savage on that one. Michael?
But you see, this is a red herring, Cap. The 150,000 was allocated within the budget for something that was going to be actually delivered within this year, this financial year. and that was to pay for the consultants to carry out the work. This has been debated ad infinitum within the council chamber. Patrick is regurgitating things that he said in the chamber at the time. What I've said at the very start of this meeting is the budget will be set once we have a tangible design and a tangible scheme in front of us, the cost, the budget for, and to apply for funding for. And, you know, the bottom line is this: our officials are tasked with delivery of phase 1 by the end of the council term in 2023. Fact. If they don't act on that, they'll be questioned on it. And I would expect every councillor, including those here tonight, to question that why it's not been done. But there has been a history. There has been a history of lack of delivery on this. Brian and others are well been frustrated in that for years. That's why I pushed for phase 1 to get that point of no return. I would expect when we have an outline business case that officers will go off and seek funding on that. You can't seek funding without the outline business case. And I'm not saying it has taken us 4 years to get here, but we have moved more in the last 12 months than we did in the previous 36. There's no doubt about that. And we have momentum now that we need to build on. And, you know, the stakeholders need to have their say on what's come back from the design team, and we need to get on with it. And, you know, I believe we need to be positive about this.
Okay.
Okay,
Michael. Yeah, go ahead.
If we're looking funding from people, we got to talk this project up. Stop talking it down. Let's talk it up. Let's talk about the benefits it's going to bring. Once we've diggers on site, we need to keep pushing this on and developing this for generations to come.
Well, we're certainly not talking it up tonight. The co-chairs aren't here. That doesn't impress me at all, and I'm sure it doesn't impress a lot of other people. Annie Balance is out there. Annie wants to talk about what's happening with the concept design. We've already touched on that with the councillors, but Annie, please come in on what you've heard.
Right. Hi. Thanks, Kevin. I tell you what it is, the concept design. So we're aware that the fact that the council have appointed the consultant or consultancy to develop the concept design. So we've had a disastrous experience with that before with regards to those concept designs. The last one that was submitted had shop units on it, which was rejected. So then they were back onto the treadmill back onto the hamster wheel really of getting a new consultant's plan out. And no one has seen this plan until it'll be released in June. So if things aren't on that, say they put car parking on it, which again will be rejected, where do we go from there? Are we waiting another year for a new concept plan? Then that brings it to 2022. So will that be used as an excuse then at that point? Well, we're actually now back a year because yous rejected. We didn't do the design plan properly.
Gentlemen, want to comment on that?
These are the constant problems that we're having with this project, Annie. I mean, I think a project that has 10,000 signatures, probably the biggest community campaign that Newry has ever seen, has already had a consultation. So the fact we then had to go back 3 years later and say, oh, by the way, I know 10,000 you signed this, but you actually want to park, it's absolute nonsense. But speaking of red herrings, we keep getting these red herrings thrown at us. I am worried about what will come back in that design report. And I think I speak for all councillors here. Well, we will do our bit to interrogate that and push back on any nonsense that we see coming out of it. We saw this with the Marenco report 2 years ago, which was a report into the ground quality at the Albert Basin Park, which basically tried to argue, it was a 500-page report. I'm not sure many councillors read it. I read the important bits. It basically tried to make out like that site was some sort of Newry version of Chernobyl, which was a complete nonsense and tried to scare councillors away from actually promoting the park. So yeah, we constantly get these curveballs thrown at us. I don't know if it's ignorance or someone playing dirty tricks. We will be there to push back on it, but it's part of the reason why things keep getting pushed back. It's incredibly frustrating. We will do our best to scrutinize it and make sure it doesn't happen anymore. But again, we do need to put our money where our mouth is as well. And just coming back to the point on putting capital aside, that figure of 1.5 million that I mentioned does have a logic to it. I have listened to Newry 2020, the main group behind pushing this project. They reckon overall this project is going to cost in and around the area of 15 million. And they know from research that they've done that other parks in Northern Ireland and elsewhere have got 80 to 90% of external funding. So 10% of 15 million, 1.5 million. I thought that was a good place for council to start in terms of putting its money where its mouth was through the rates process.
Gavin?
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I completely agree with Councillor Brown. there's no going back, Annie. The park's going to go ahead, but it's the frustration and it's the speed of it. It's just not good enough. And that's where senior management are going to be asked to step up the mark. At the end of the day, they're accountable to us as councillors, and I'll hold them accountable to do what they're instructed to do. And I'm, at the end of the day, you know, I'm accountable to people, as we all are, who we represent. And I won't be found wanting when senior management are asked to carry out instructions. I'll hold them accountable. The park has always been and will always be my priority. End off. Having a civic centre is wonderful, but it's certainly not my priority. I want to see it off the Range Park as soon as possible. And Michael, there has been a lot more done in the last 12 months, but it's nowhere near fast enough, and we need to redouble our efforts.
Michael, nowhere near fast enough, but at the same time, Michael, frustration over red tape, that would be probably what you're saying.
Listen, we've all been frustrated with red tape. We've all been frustrated at the pace at which civil servants work within society. A lot of people here work within their roles day to day, where there's an immediate delivery requirement in everything they do. But let's be honest about where we are, right? There was a great petition and consultation done initially by Brian and the Newry 2020 team. But in order to get the progress moved, we had to do a root and branch consultation process to really find what was in the hearts and minds of the people of the greater Newry area. We got that in bucket loads. And, you know, nobody can come back on the back of that consultation process and tell me the parking is a priority at that park. It wasn't. The priorities that came across were about play, open space, woodland, walkways. Those are the things we're going to deliver, and they're going to be encapsulated within phase one. Because the other things that we talked about, maybe looking at skateboards and everything, skate parks and other elements that we talked about, maybe nature trails, things like that, they can all be incorporated as this park. This park, I hope, will be here in 300 years' time. And I hope with some beautiful big oak trees and everything else that generations down the line can enjoy. But we've got to get it started, and that's where we pushed on with phase one. Now, if there's any shenanigans with anybody coming and trying to delay this, there'll be war in the council chamber from the councillors involved in this. We've had enough delay. We've had enough dilly-dallying. But, you know, to put money into a budget that's not going to be spent this year is nuts, because it's putting the rates up on people who aren't going to spend the money. That 1.5 million or 2.5 million, if it's needed next year to deliver phase one, will be put in the budget. And that commitment is there, and the space is there in the capital budget to do that. So saying that we haven't allocated anything, we have spent what's needed to be spent on this phase. And next year's financial year is the one where the big spend will come, 2022 and 2023. And the councillors will not be found wanting in making sure in the Strategic Finance Working Group that the money's made available to do that. That commitment was made in the chamber. It's a matter of public record. So
thank you, Michael.
Let's focus on what we want to do.
Annie Balance, please come back. You've heard what our councillors have said there. I'm going to bring in Shirley Forshaw in a minute, but I want to hear from Annie there first of all.
Yeah, no, what I agree with what I'm listening to what you're saying. What deeply concerns me is what's your plan? What's the plan going to be when this concept plan comes out in June? You know, you're saying there, yes, you've listened. I did that consultation for what was wanted in the park. I ticked all the boxes. I mean, how can you guarantee? Has any of you seen this plan before we see it in June? Has any of the councillors seen it yet?
No, nobody will see it until June.
What we have seen, Annie, is the brief.
Well, have you?
No, we were involved. The council produced a brief for like all consultants operate to a brief, and the brief was to deliver what came back in the consultation. So if they come back with something completely off, they're not getting paid because they're not doing. They haven't set out to do what they set out to do. Okay. I would be quietly confident that they will come back with a phased approach to what has to be done, because that's what councillors have asked for, and that's what we've paid them good money, very good money, no doubt, for to deliver. So, you know, if there's a problem, it'll be fought tooth and nail. I can't, because if there is a problem, it's because they've gone outside the brief.
Can I ask you a question there on that, Michael? You mentioned where it would be rolled out to the stakeholders, but maybe before you make a decision on it.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, as I said at the very start of this meeting, this whole process, the whole project has been the brainchild of the community. It has been driven by the community through Newry 2020 and other organisations. And it has been outlined very clearly by the community as what they wanted to look, touch and feel like, right? So as far as I'm concerned, before you cut a sod on it, you go back to the community and say, here's in the guise of the stakeholder forum, because I made sure that the stakeholder forum was maintained and wasn't put away at the end of the task and finish group. That stakeholder forum, and the main rationale why it probably hasn't met tonight is because we've very little to discuss till now. Now we have meat on the bone in the form of the consultant's report for the design and that's where there'll be real engagement, I believe, with those involved. And, you know, there may be disappointments in what we can deliver in phase 1 and what will have to be delivered in phase 2. That's the nature of the beast, depending on what's feasible within the timescale. But what we will do is we will say to people, this is where the priorities that have come out on the consultation, this is what we're making it look like within the parameters of what the site underneath, you know, this reclaimed land, where we can cap, where we can green. And, you know, that's the brief the consultants were given. And I expect them to come back with that. And if they don't come back, there'll be serious questions asked. So I expect any professional company to come back and stick to the briefs that they were given.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's bring in Shirley Forshaw, who's a GP in Newry. Shirley, you've been listening quietly to everything that's going on. You're very much involved in the community. Our health and well-being, right now I feel like lying down. Maybe a lot of the rest of you do as well. It's very stressful, this park. It hasn't happened for us. We are in, from 2017, we're certainly into 4 years, as Michael pointed out. It looks like another 2 years as well before we can finally say, oh, there's a park, but it's not complete. And when it will be complete is a big question for us all. But a lot of frustration out there, Shirley.
Definitely. Kevin, just to give you a bit of background, like I was born in Newry. I've been a GP in Newry for 25 years. You know, so Newry is very close to my heart, and always thought a park is what we definitely need. And everybody knows the benefits. Everyone knows the health benefits of it. What I suppose I would feel is more an emergency is after or with COVID and the pandemic, the amount of mental health problems that we are seeing in general practice. I have never experienced it before in my 25 years. They're saying 40% of GP consultations, you actually have an element of mental health problems there. And a lot of mental health problems isn't about, you know, medication. It's about being active, getting out into good green spaces, which improves your mental health, not only for adults, but for children as well. It improves children's, you know, concentration, it improves their behavior, it even improves their standardized scores in school. You know, so there's so many positive things that we need. I suppose what just worries me is I think there is a window now that we can actually do things and help to change and prevent, you know, deterioration of people's mental health, but also their physical health. And I think the council has a great onus upon them to get this park up and running. It's crazy how long it's actually taken. And I suppose, you know, when you look at the benefits, you know, studies have been done and people should be getting 30 minutes exercise 5 times a week. It's 53% for Northern Ireland, but actually in this area, it's only 51% of people are doing that. And very few people are even actually getting the 30 minutes a week. So we need to do a lot more for prevention of illness in this area as well.
Yes, and let's bring in Grania Powell, because she works with young people, and maybe she would concur with what you're saying. Grania, we're talking about the behavior of children and their concentration. Young people need their physical well-being, and they need to be looked after a lot better. And surely we need a park in a big city like we have. It's not the biggest city in the world, but it is a big city. It's a city, and it's probably the only city in the world that doesn't have a proper park. Shirley will bring you back in a wee minute, but let's hear from Grania first of all. Grania? Doesn't look like we have Grania on board. Maybe she's taking a break for a minute. Oh, there she is. Hello, Grania.
Okay, hi, Kevin. Thank you for inviting.
Did you hear what I said? Yeah.
I did, yes. Okay, just to clarify, first of all, I'm not part of any political organization or any party. I'm very much just an ordinary person who happens to be running a company that works very much with children and young people with a remit to promote play and creative opportunities, and especially in the outdoors in the current climate. I think, though, it's quite obvious the benefits of children and young people to have an open space, and especially now more than ever. But I think one of the reasons why I might have been invited to the panel is because I have quite a lot of experience in actually developing and creating parks. Now, at the moment, we're in the middle of actually doing a park up in Donegal, and we've 2 more in County Louth. But the most relevant would have been the Giants Lair in Slieve Gullion, which was a council facility as well. Just to clarify, the Giants Lair happened not because of the council's input, but despite of it. And I don't want to be unfair, but the cost of the Giants Lair was just over $500,000. 390,000 of that money was secured by sticky fingers, by us securing the money, identifying open programs, and actually putting the applications in. We also did all the business plans, the feasibility plans, project design, every single element of it. Which is why it happened in the time scale it did. From our experience of developing parks, it takes between roughly 18 months to 2 years from concept to design. So the fact that we are, 6 years down the line on a council park for the city is absolutely ludicrous. Somebody somewhere is not doing their job. It does not take that amount of time. I understand budgets are restricted and money is difficult to find, but then you break it up and you do what we call a cocktail approach, where you separate different parts of it and you create different parts of it at different stages. The fact that we are still at this point where there's no design process and no nothing happening doesn't actually surprise me from my experience of working with the council. I think I've said before that when anybody else has a good idea, you put a plan in place to get the steps together to actually realizing that ambition. But my experience of working with the council is that when you have a good idea, they put in place the plan of the different obstacles to block it actually progressing. There is no excuse at this stage for the fact that we do not have a park in Newry. A park could happen very simply and very quickly with not a huge amount of money. The figures that are being thrown around are aspirational for a fabulous facility, which is what we actually want. But to get to that point, we could do it in stages. It doesn't take huge amount of monies to achieve small successes. It's ridiculous at this stage that we're still having this conversation. At this stage, I have created, I think, a dozen parks, from design, consultation, and every other aspect. And I've never encountered the obstacles to what we're witnessing through 2020.
Thank you, Grania, for that. Let's bring in a young person. Let's bring in a student. Aoife Hollywood is a university student, and she wants to talk about health, well-being, and the green spaces, which works very nicely with what we've already been discussing with Grania and our previous speaker as well, which was Dr. Shirley Forshaw. Aoife Hollywood. Oh, have we got Aoife?
Looks like Aoife might have dropped off the call. She was here earlier, Kevin.
Okay, we got Wayne Denner out there. Wayne, are you there? Lots of people on the call, but maybe not just picking up as quick. Let's go back to the councillors for a moment, and you know, you've been listening to what Dr. Forshaw has said, and you've also heard what Grania has said. What's your view on all of that in terms of mental health and activity and getting out there and children's well-being and so on? Michael?
Yeah, Kevin, you know, my day job as a constituency worker, I am experiencing the same things that Shirley and Grania are highlighting. We are dealing with a mental health time bomb at the moment. I don't know how GPs are coping with it. I know the mental health team locally are struggling to meet the demand. I know the level of additionality that people have who are maybe on HIP and other benefits that have been struggling with their own physical health. What I've seen now is that there's a new dimension to their health needs, and that is mental health. They have not coped well during lockdown. A park, I believe, in a green open space, somewhere to exercise, somewhere to breathe clean air, and hopefully on the back of the Southern Relief Road as well, taking the the fumes out of our city. You know, we will create that haven for people, you know, that idol where people can go and feel that they're part of nature and have the time to relax, to exercise, and do all the things that are needed for good mental well-being. But you know, the COVID pandemic has taught us something a very solitary lesson, and that is that, you know, most important things we have around us are our natural environments. We have seen a complete explosion in people going to the hills, going to the moorns, going for walks in our countryside. But the people in Newry struggle because they're actually taking their life in their own hands at times to try and walk along some of the streets because of their narrow makeup, and the fact that, you know, we are in the process of trying to develop an active transport strategy, or an active travel strategy for cycling, for walking across the city, and trying to link our towpath to the Greenway. And you know, the main hub that's going to link those two will be the Albert Basin Park, and that's why I just want to clarify in relation to the points that were made, and I'll come back to the other points in relation to what I was talking about in phase one. I can only speak about phase one. I can only talk about phase one in relation to what we have agreed to in council as phase one.
Because presently that's all you have, isn't it?
Well, no, well, that's what we've committed to and have outlined that as. So by default, I'm presuming that the skate park element and other elements will come in as part of phase two, unless there's funding available, and unless maybe there's something within the document that comes in the report that can move that on quicker.
Right. Can I stop you there?
Possible, but that was
Michael, I want to bring in James McConville. James wants to talk about linking the park to the city and the greenways, and perhaps it'll be worth listening to what James has to say before I give everybody else, as in Patrick and Gavin, a chance to talk as well. So James, are you there?
Yeah, thanks very much, Kevin. Can you hear me okay?
I can indeed.
Sorry. Just want to, before I ask my question, just to get back on one quick thing. Background about me is I'm the architect volunteer that, if you've seen any of the drawings of the park, the concept plans, the thing behind Brian, that was my hard work back in 2015 or 2014 or whenever it was. Anyway, I just got a few points just to say. I've got my head in my hands when I hear people talking sequentially about project delivery. There's a meaning of a word called concurrent. You can do two things at the same time. You can walk and chew gum. And this idea that you need to get a plan, then you need to go and get business case, then you have to go to funders, and it's all sequential. That just makes a project super long. There's different ways, it's called procurement, different ways to deliver projects. There's design and build, where you get a contractor in earlier. And we've worked with BID actually to propose a two-stage design and build strategy, which would deliver the park super quickly. You hire a contractor early, you have the architects, and you're building and designing at the same time. There's different ways to deliver this. The problem I see is there's a complete lack of willingness from our council to do this. Now, I don't know what's happening inside the unelected part of the council, but there's some serious issues there, and it's been brought up previously, I think, very well by Grania. Like any other council, you know, I don't know, it just beggars belief. But the question, and it's just the other thing I want to say is about the skateboard park. I just mentioned it and I typed it in everything angrily because this drives me mental. We had a consultation, the preferred recreational thing, the top one, and we're talking about mental health. Skateboard park was number one, and it's a replacement one for the skate park that was turned into a car park 25 years ago in Kilkeel, with the council specifically saying that we're going to replace it. Skateboarding is a perfect sport for young people, especially teenagers who struggle with mental health problems. I've been working on projects in Palestine, delivering it to tackle the mental health crisis there. So the skateboard park needs to be in phase one as it was demanded in the consultation. Okay, my question is, though, how do we see the active travel strategy being incorporated within the city park and the idea of the Greenway connecting Greenore to Lough Neagh? Because currently we have active travel strategy that's being completed now, and we're going to have a parking strategy which is going to be completed later, but nothing's talking to each other. How are we going to make sure, and how's the council going to make sure that the Greenway is incorporated within the city park?
Patrick Brown.
Yes, thanks, Kevin and James. You know, I'm of a like mind with you on this, so I fully endorse it. I believe that we need to take a holistic look at this project and link in the active travel strategy, link up links to Grenore, to Ross Trevor. And look, I can sit here and talk about the need to, enhance the sense of place on the Albert Basin and create community and improve mental health. And, no one's going to put that better than Shirley has done here tonight. I can sit here and throw out all sorts of buzzwords and wax lyrical about how great the park's going to be as a councillor. I don't think that's going to move things any further along. I think we're all of a same mind on this. I do think it's fantastic to have the likes of Grania, James and Shirley, who are experts in the field, that we're doing the opposite of what Michael Gove advocates and actually listening to the experts. I'm glad we're doing that as councillors. I wish our council corporately was doing more of that. But what you guys actually, I think, want tonight are clear answers and clear proposals about how we can move things forward, right? We're not just here to sing the praises of the park. And I just find it really frustrating that Michael's talked about we shouldn't put 1.5 million aside in last year's rates process because it's not going to be spent this year and it'll be add-on to ratepayers. That's not how your rates process works, folks. Michael should know this. We cash flow capital projects from our reserves and it doesn't get added on to the rates cost until after we've finished construction. But also going back to this double standard issue again, if you look at the Civic Centre project in the theatre and so on, 35 million that's been sitting there in the capital budget for years, and we haven't spent any of that on a significant capital spend. Yet we can sit and ring fence that project, which is far, far less popular than the park, and we can't ring fence anything for the park. These are political decisions, folks, and other councillors are not making them.
Maurice McComble's out there at the moment. Maurice, you have a question on funding, which probably would be very good to bring up right now. Are you there, Maurice? Maurice McComble?
Yes, I'm here.
Well, Maurice, you have a question on funding. We were just touching on it there a minute ago,
well,
but
I think it has been covered. I mean, you just batting this ball back and forward. It's just the fact that of that 35 million, 9 million, I think, has been set aside for it's broken down anyway to the point, in fact, where I've got the figures here, but you know them anyway. There is 1%. It works out of the money set aside this year. 1% is going to the park. The most popular item in the regeneration. And, Michael can go on saying, yeah, it's brilliant, the park, but we know the park's a great idea. We know it's but it's not being delivered and it's just being done really slowly. And to say that we will get something, not even defined yet, but we get something for 3 years down the road, it's just not good enough. We should be getting this thing quicker. There's one other point I want to make, though, which is to do with the issue that James just raised. Is to do with the fact that are they going to consider biodiversity in this park? Newry has a plan for biodiversity, which I don't think anyone ever talks about. I'm not even sure if anybody's ever read it, but it's the council has a responsibility to legally protect biodiversity. And Newry, if Newry had a green corridor through the middle, it would link up it would be a corridor for wildlife to migrate. So I'm just wondering, where are the councillors on that? What do they think about the fact that this would be a good opportunity for biodiversity? And what are their views on this and the local development plan that they have? Newry has a local biodiversity development plan, but I don't know how much of it's implemented. I'd like to know how the councillors feel about that.
Right, let's bring in the councillors. And Kevin Malone, you're listening.
Yeah, I agree with Shirley and James, and certainly Grania with regards to obstacles, because that seems to be the nature of the game. That's the general consensus that a lot of people who have spoken, they seem to think that senior management are running the council and not the councillors. That seems to be the general analysis. With regards to Marsh, yes, biodiversity is very important, and certainly that's really important. Also, Kevin, I think it's very important with this report coming back in the next few weeks. I think it would be very important that no one is excluded, and as soon as that report comes back, that we have an meeting straight away to take the views, and most importantly, the instructions from these people at this meeting this evening, and what they instruct us to do from here on in. Then I have a duty of care. I can't speak for any councillor, but I have a duty of care and responsibility, and I certainly won't be shrinking from it. Whatever the people here, Grania, Shirley, everyone here this evening, tell me what needs done, well, I'll certainly be taking that to council management and our fellow councillors. And that's the most important people is the people from the public here this evening. And to me, that's the most important thing, that I need to follow up on what they're telling me. So as soon as this report comes back, I think a meeting needs to be called straight away, discuss it, and then we'll take forward what we've been told at these meetings, because ultimately it's the people who count, not me. I'm irrelevant in this. It's the people here this evening. They're the most important thing.
Thanks, Kevin. Michael, biodiversity and also timelines have been brought into question again. No one's happy with the timelines that you've talked about.
Yeah, well, let me make something very clear. It's very easy to set me up as the punch bag tonight, because I'm being honest with people. What I will is, I've seen a few comments there, you know, because I'm talking about what has been delivered. And I can be very frank with people here. I could easily have just thrown the head up and got frustrated like everybody else. But when something needed done in this project, I stepped forward. And Brian Cleland and others within Newry 2020 can be testimony to that. At every stage that this project moved forward, I proposed it in the SPNR Committee and Council. You've no idea the hijinks we had to get up to actually get this project past the opposition we had from Sinn Féin at the time. I think Patrick alluded to it. We had to do a bit of chicanery in council to actually get this on the agenda and present the opportunity for Patrick, along with Gary Stokes, to put the motion to council. Now, there was some work done to get it that far, and ever since I have engaged tooth and nail to get this project driven on. I am as frustrated, if not more, than anybody at the pace that this has moved at. But that's the reality sometimes of what I call trapping through treacle that local government can be. It took us nearly 15 years to develop our 2 leisure centres. That's the reality with those multi-million pound projects. This project will be delivered. And I have played a very full role in getting it to where it is now. It's not perfect. It has not been a perfect process, but we are at the point of delivery now. And what we need to do is to engage positively, see where we want to go with this once we get the report back. And this is where I believe engagement with the stakeholder forum. This is where the role of keeping the stakeholder forum bolted onto this project, where they will have their meaningful say. And that is because they'll be seeing for the first time something that we've only seen for the first time. And we will all come together and say, right, here's what's doable in the short term. I have been working on the act of the possible here and trying to deliver the park to this stage, because projects like this, if the pressure's not kept on, can slip and slide and maybe in some cases disappear. And maybe some people wanted this project to disappear in the early stages, but we fought tooth and nail to keep it going. And the project will be delivered in some shape or form by 2023 and built on, I believe, in every council term after that, until we have a park that is mature and meets the needs of our citizens.
Thank you, Michael.
The main thing people need to stay focused on is where we are now. There's a lot of dwelling on how long it's taken us to get here. What I'm more interested in is how long it takes us to get to where we need to be from here on in. And that's what people together.
I need to bring Patrick Brown in on this.
But that's when funders will come in behind this, because they'll see the positivity around the park. And this will be the most positive project I think local government has delivered in this area.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. Patrick Brown, Mission Impossible, or is it?
Yes, thanks, Kevin. And I want to say to Michael, you know, as I said at the start, in no way would I cast aspersions on his dedication to this park. And I think, you know, and most of the time we do work quite well in council on this. So I don't want in any way to put him up as a punching bag. And it is hard to be here from one of the bigger parties as well. And it's a shame that the other party that's maybe done less than us isn't here to take some questions too. So that was not my intention at all. I do think, you know, Michael talked about the bureaucracy and wading through treacle of dealing with local government, and the fact that it's taken, you know, decade to get leisure centres, etc., in Downpatrick and Newry. There is one way to get council officers to move quickly, That's to build new council offices that they don't need. Because when that option is on the table, suddenly it's pulling out all the stops to get a business case to talk about the economic benefits of all the sandwiches that these civil servants are going to buy in Newry city centre, and all of the multiplier effects of that. Again, it goes back to the double standards. We are constantly told as councillors, if we don't press ahead with this unnecessary £12 million second civic centre, then Daisy Hill won't be able to expand. If we don't press ahead with this project, we're going to lose the city deal funding, and you'll not get your fader, and everything will go tits up. That's what is being constantly held over our head as councillors. It's not acceptable. See, when we try and put money into the park, oh, there's no business case. Oh, the consultant's report has.
Patrick, is the tail wagging the dog here?
I certainly don't think anyone's wagging my tail, Kevin.
Okay, let's bring in Tom Moore. Tom Moore, you've been listening quietly and patiently. Tom.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah, I think we've got to the stage where we need to ask direct questions here. I've been around long enough to know that if you don't want something to happen, but don't want to be blamed for it not happening, then use all the fobs you can. Can I ask the councillors here tonight, are they prepared to put the following question to our local council? And it is as follows. Can the Newry, Mourne and Down District Council confirm by a yes or a no via a dated statement that the council and its officials are not aware of and do not know of any individual or any organisation that has indicated or given notice of an interest in the Albert Basin site for use other than the proposed People's Park? The reason for that question, Kevin, is, and panel and members, the reason for that question is I believe that either two things are happening. One, a political party involved in the situation is wanting to wait until it is holding a Northern Ireland position where it might be worthy to be the party that is opening the Newry People's Park. Or two, that the council is aware of some other person or organisation that has some other scheme for the Albert Basin Park. It has to be one or other.
Okay, loaded question. We'll wait on that for a minute. Let's bring in Brendan Kern, who was a councillor at one stage. He's not anymore. Brendan, you have a question. Brendan Kern. I think Brendan has gone silent. Let's bring in the councillors. I think that's a loaded question and probably something that would need to be answered in the council chamber, but let's bring in the councillors on Tom's question. Let's go with Patrick Brown, first of all.
Yes, thank you, Tom. A very well thought out and well worded question. If I can get it in writing somewhere, I'm certainly more than happy to send it to the chief executive or read it into the record in a council meeting. Unfortunately, you made reference to fudging things, and I do think there will be a way to possibly fudge the response to that, and we may not get a straight answer. Sometimes I think that the council is so good at fudging things, it should open a chocolate factory, to be honest, but it is what it is. But thank you very much for your question. It definitely puts the mind to work. Okay,
Jerry Brennan is out there. Jerry, you have a wee question. I will go back to Michael Savage on that question of Tom's in a minute, but I just want to try and get as many people in with their questions, and then we'll see where we're at. Jerry Brennan?
Yes, Kevin and panel, good evening. Listen, I've got a question here. I have an interest as the chairman of Silvery Light Sailing, and I hear about the park and support the park 110% and more. But there's a real living asset which should be integrated into the park, and that's the canal and the Albert Basin. Now, I would like to know what real value does the council place upon the Newry Canal as an economic, community and environmental asset? And I ask that question because there's never been, to my knowledge, any active promotion of the canal. There's been use of it for swimming galas and what have you, but it's never ever been promoted. Money has been spent on the lock gates, And some time ago, NIE were forced to put cables under the canal to maintain the navigation. But yet we have, in thinking about the park now, we have the Albert Basin and we have the Greenway running down the canal, all forming part of a great sort of asset. But what value does the council place upon it? When you take the bridge into consideration, the opening bridge or the fixed bridge, I mean, if it was Coco the Clown who was writing a letter to DFI, they couldn't have put it better. As a maybe this and a maybe that sort of question. What is the question? What is the answer to the opening bridge as regards to the canal? The independent assessment, economic assessment, looked at historic data. Didn't look forward. It didn't say what could we do with this and what would be the economic driver of the canal and the Albert Basin. They look backwards and say, sure, nothing ever uses it. Well, nothing uses it because it's never promoted. It's never been a strong point, as far as I can see, by the council in Newry, with petty bureaucracy and everything else that surrounds the operations of anybody on the canal. So the question is, what value do you place upon the canal as an asset? And look at Europe with all its canals and the great facilities that it promotes. And what plans, and better still, what brief did the consultants who are now looking at the park get to incorporate the council's wishes for the future of the canal and its integration into the greater park scheme? Is there an answer?
Thank you very much. Michael Savage, your colleague Gary Stokes did touch on the bridge situation, fixed or open, in our last meeting. But however, please answer the question.
In relation to the
well, let's talk on that question there in relation to the canal, and then we could go back and talk about Tom Moore's question.
Well, I'll deal with Tom's one very simply and very quickly. Tom, I asked that very question of our previous chief executive. I asked, was there a commercial interest in the Albert Basin whenever there were what I believe to be very strong obstacles been put in front of us whenever we were trying, as Patrick will allude to, trying to even get it on the agenda. I was told at the time definitively that there wasn't. So not only did I put it in writing, I put it face to face with party colleagues around me at the time. I'm not sure whether Councillor Stokes was there or not, but certainly there were other councillors. That question was asked because that was something that had to be asked at the time. So that question was asked, and I've no problem asking it again in writing or otherwise. And like Councillor Brown would happily ask for that. As far as we're concerned, the last time there was an attempt to put any commercial development on that site, it was taken out and ripped out effectively out of the consultation process, as proposed by myself and other councillors at the time. It was made abundantly clear that we were about a 15-acre park, nothing else, no commercial development on it, and that's where we are, and that's where the council's commitment is. So, you know, what the bottom line is this, is that, you know, councillors through motions and through decisions, that's what decides the way the council operates. And if officials have decide to go in a different way, they'd be pulled back very quickly. So just to clear on that one. In relation to the waterways are central to the development of our city. We're very unique that we have two waterways running right through them. And just to touch on the biodiversity stuff that Morris and all raised earlier, we had a very good meeting this week. I know Newry 2020 we're involved in it, in relation to the active travel and trying to create this greenway, an urban greenway through Newry. And that will sort of run between our two waterways, and the opportunities for biodiversity and creating a haven of a walkway and cycleway through the city is something that I very firmly want to deliver. Myself and Brian and others and DFI officials and Gary and Justin McNulty MLA walked the potential routes that are there, and I know there's a very firm commitment from the Minister Nicola Mullen to try and progress that. There's work ongoing at the moment, and I hope within the year the report will be back from the officials as to what steps can be taken to develop that. And I think linking the towpath right through the park as the hub and then onto the greenway will be a superb benefit to the city. and create that ecological and healthy spine, active walking and active transport, active travel spine through the city. In relation to the waterways, the problem we have as a council is we have inherited an issue whereby for a number of generations now, the roadways over the top of the canal mean as a navigational canal, we're very limited as to what we can do. And I know certainly during the previous Newry and Mournes Council's time back in around the millennium, there was an application put in to develop, as far as I know, we're trying to reopen parts of the canal and to develop reinvigorate and regenerate the locks. But the money didn't go to us. It went on with I think from the Scarva to Portadown end of the canal, and we didn't get it. That said, we're all very clearly on the record in relation to an opening bridge. We believe that if we don't have an opening bridge, we close off the potential for future generations when finance is available and new technology comes about to open up our waterways. And Jerry, I've met you and I fully understand the deep commitment you have to our waterways in the area. And, you know, as far as we're concerned, that's our preference. And I think Councillor Stokes actually at our recent meeting, whenever this was discussed, insisted that while the economic appraisal that would have come back would never have stacked, it was made abundantly clear that a letter of support from the council stating very clearly that the council's position was that we were in support of an opening bridge and that the benefits were far more tangible than the benefits you'd see or reap from an economic appraisal. As far as we were concerned, this was about protecting our maritime and waterway heritage in the city and right up into the Carlingford Loch. So, you know, there's a deep commitment there and a deep understanding that we have I think it's the oldest navigational canal in Ireland, at least, if not these islands. So, you know, from that perspective, you know, we have to look at opportunities down the line, and I think that the delivery of an opening bridge would secure those opportunities from, you know, happening down the line. But you know, we do have big obstacles to overcome. We have, I think it's 5 roadways go over the top of the canal through the city. So we would need you know, tens of £1 million investment to do something with that. But you know something, you know, after we've the park and after we've our regeneration done here, you know, we should be looking at that as a potential development that could happen down the line. But you know, it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of ambition. But there's
Thanks, Michael.
We can't go back to that.
Thank you. Gavin, let's bring you in. First of all, answer Tom's question. Is there any other body out there, any other organisation perhaps has an interest in the Albert Basin that you know?
First and foremost, that's the question that I've been asked on numerous occasions. I'm not aware of it, but certainly I have been asked, because people have said, why is this park stalled? Is there an ulterior motive? I don't know. I can't answer that. And Tom is certainly right to ask that question. With regards to that question, it's somewhat irrelevant now because the park's going ahead by hook or crook. It's certainly not going ahead at the pace that I want it to go ahead and our people want it to go ahead. And that's an issue. With regards to the waterways canal, I think with regards to having a state-of-the-art park there, I think it's really important that the waterways becomes a serious tourist attraction, and there's going to have to be serious investment. But most importantly, when there's a will, there's a way. And there is a consensus with a lot of people that for some, there's not a will, but I can only speak on my behalf. I am determined to see this park through, and the quicker, the better. And talk's cheap, but you know, with this report come back, I think it's really important that we call a meeting straight away, everyone here this evening, and then I'll take instructions from the people here and our people, and I'm sure our councillors will, to move us forward a lot quicker.
Brian Cleland, you've been listening quietly. That question from Tom Moore, I'm sure would concern you.
Yeah, it's been, you know, as Gavin just said, you know, and to be fair, I also remember Michael raising that similar question as you mentioned earlier on. I remember him raising that question, and fair play to him for doing so. It's been a constant recurring question because people just can't understand why our council would fight tooth and nail, and I use those words very deliberately, fight tooth and nail to prevent our community having green space. Because that's been my experience of what's happened. And you know, so of course people try to maybe leap to the worst possible conclusions. But we need answers. We need to know what on earth is going on, on Jerry's question, I just say, like, from Newry 2020's point of view, the canal, the waterways, absolutely 100% an integral part of our vision and the community's vision. Anybody who's from Newry or knows Newry knows that you can't talk about Newry without including the canal as the beating heart of the city. And the park has to incorporate a living waterway and a marina. There's no question about that, and that's why we can't allow a fixed bridge to be built on this, or unique and historic ship canal to be closed down. It's absolutely totally unacceptable that would even be proposed. I actually think it illustrates the current situation with regard to the canal, the ship canal, and the proposed bridge. Illustrates perfectly the schizophrenic attitude that we seem to have in our council, where you have the councillors, to be fair, very often trying to do their best to represent the community. In this case, making it explicit, or at least that's what they said they'll do, make it explicit that they want a fixed bridge, a lifting bridge over the canal to keep the canal open. And at the same time, behind the scenes, without anybody supposed to know what's going on, we have a letter, a recommendation been sent to the department, apparently to build a fixed bridge. So we have literally two directly conflicting messages coming from the council. One in public for a lifting bridge, another one behind the scenes for a fixed bridge. I mean, that just illustrates the fundamental issues we have with governance in our council. And, I don't envy the councillors their task for for fixing those issues, but they have to be addressed face on. So they're excellent questions, and I think it's great to have different representatives of the community raising these issues. And fair play to all the reps and all the panelists here tonight for facing these difficult questions head on, because I think these open, honest conversations ultimately are to everybody's benefit and will lead to better outcomes for all of us.
Let's go back to Tom Moore. Tom, you've listened to what the councillors have to say. You also heard what Brian had to say. Have they answered your question? Tom?
No, I think we're missing the point here. There has to be something wrong, seriously. Now, for instance, if I was a chief executive of Newry and Mourne and Down District Council, I would want it to be in my legacy that I got the Newry People's Park opened. And I can't understand how Eugene Halloway lost that opportunity. We now have another chief executive.
Liam Hannaway.
Oh, sorry, Liam Hannaway. Yeah. Eugene was his father who taught me. Sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, I can't understand how any chief executive wouldn't want it to be on their legacy that they were there for the opening of Newry's People's Park.
We'll have to be very fair here to Liam. Liam's not here to answer that.
No, and I'm not sorry. I'm not accusing Liam of anything. All I'm saying is that it begs the question as to why this has not been moved forward. Now, maybe my other theory is the one that a certain political party who haven't been represented here tonight want to wait until they are holding, as they hope, the First Minister post in order to be able to announce Newry's People's Park. That's all I have to say.
Well, there's nobody here can answer that tonight.
No,
again, you're asking that question. Let's bring in Gary McAllister about transparency and also public engagement. And Gary, perhaps that's the problem. Things aren't clear enough for the general public. We're not getting any messages from the council. People aren't talking to us.
Kevin, I don't think Gary's online.
Gary's not online, no. Yeah. Gary's not online. Okay, let's go back to Jerry Brennan then. Jerry, have the councillors answered your question?
Yes and no. I'm being like a councillor now. Yes and no. The question that I was what is the value that the council places upon the canal? And how, if there is a value other than in words, where is it going to be demonstrated? I mean, there's no promotion takes part of the canal as an asset, and it's like eating an elephant. You do it in small bites. We don't have to wait till we can lift the bridge in the Dublin Road and all the rest of it. There is something there now from the Victoria Locks up to the Albert Basin. It's living, it's there. It's not got to be placed there. It just needs modest investment, and it's adding to the environment for the park and the greenway and better well-being for the citizens. Now, why is that something that the bridge, by the very fact that although people support or say they support an opening bridge, but write letters to the contrary or recommendations to the contrary, that will indicate to me that the council isn't going to invest in the canal because there's this great big bridge question hanging over it. So I can't make any sense out of any of the answers that I get because they're not, to me, a true reflection of what life is about within the council as regards to the Newry Canal. Be honest. Is it an asset that you want to see developed and maintain the heritage, as you say, and do something about it, put modest investment into it? Or are you going to recommend the bridge and say, that's it, it's only going to be for swimmers and canoes, and the hell with the heritage?
Thanks, Jerry. Thank you for that. What we will do is we'll ask the councillors in their summary at the end to come back on that very briefly, but they did make efforts to answer your question. I have a couple of other people I want to bring in if they're still with us. Certainly give them the opportunity to ask a question. Damien McShane, are you out there, Damien? Damien McShane. And Brendan Kern. Either gentleman, Brendan Kern or Damien McShane. No, okay. So what we're going to do at this stage, I'm going to bring Brian in from 2020. We're going to try and wrap it up because we've been going at this for quite a while. And then we're going to ask the councillors to do a little summary of what they've heard and what they've thought and what they'll bring on board and maybe try and implement and consider over the coming weeks, particularly coming into June. We'll also possibly bring in Dr. Forshaw and also Grania Powell as well in that summary. But let's first of all hear from Brad Cleland in summary for 2020.
Apologies, I was on mute there. So yeah, thanks very much, Kevin. You know, and clearly, you know, there are a lot of frustrations out there. We've heard that tonight, but I think it's much healthier when these frustrations and queries are addressed openly in a public meeting like this. You know, I think it's been overall a very useful and productive meeting. And as I said already, you know, I think significant credit due to the three elected representatives who've appeared here tonight to answer the hard questions. You know, it's a shame not all, you know, especially Sinn Féin is not represented here tonight, being the biggest party in council, but hopefully we can change that in the future. You know, one of the points I wanted to go back to, it was raised earlier on by Annie Balance regarding the concept design. That's an important issue because having the council with a clearly defined design that we're all agreed on, hopefully, will be a hugely significant turning point for this project. But there are risks, as Annie alluded to. People are aware that last year, most people will be aware that last year, when the survey was initially proposed, there was an attempt by council management to try and pitch the idea of building shops and houses on the Albert Basin instead of a park. And that was, as soon as people became aware of it, it was immediately shot down. But, you know, what it shows is that there is an attitude somewhere in the council, presumably in the senior levels of the council, that this park is not an important thing, that this is not the best idea for that site. There was another, so that's something we have to be very conscious of. That issue hasn't gone away as far as I can tell. But there's another issue that was raised last year, got less attention, but to my mind was equally important in many ways. There was an attempt in May last year by one of the council directors to propose that they take the car parking that they're about to displace, or they're proposing to displace behind the cathedral, and put it on the Albert Basin. We brought this to public attention on Facebook and were immediately attacked by a number of councillors, none of them here tonight. We were accused of spreading mistruths or untruths or rumours. Turned out that the minutes weren't published until 6 months later, but when they were published, it turned out what we said was exactly 100% correct. That the senior member of the council had proposed to put car parking on the Albert Basin site. That risk has not gone away. So that's something the councillors need to be aware of, because the risk is that a design will be put in front of them in a couple of weeks' time that is substandard, compromises the high standard that the community have set for this park, and they're put under pressure to rubber stamp it, and then we're back into conflict with the public again. We don't want that to happen. So the councillors, I think, need to talk to the officers to make sure that the design they get in June is of sufficient quality. And really, the consultants and the designers need to be able to talk to the key stakeholders like ourselves and other groups. I mean, it's crazy that we are not allowed to talk to those people. So that's just something I wanted to bring people's attention to. The second point is that the plan, which is something we started talking about tonight, and I think is also a really, really critical issue. Michael says correctly that there is a commitment, and he's re-emphasized it here tonight, to deliver phase 1 of the park by 2023. But a plan is not just a single milestone 2 years in the future. A plan, a proper project plan, has multiple detailed steps and milestones as to how we get there. And as far as I'm aware, there is no plan in existence at this point. Certainly, we haven't seen it. It's not in the public domain. There has to be a plan put in place. And finally, as you've already alluded to, Kevin, you know, and relating to the similar point, you know, I'd like to ask to finish this conversation tonight. I'd like to ask the councillors, what can we expect to happen, not in 2 years' time, but this year? So we've 6 months more or less to the end of this year. What's going to happen in the next 6 months? Because we intend, Kevin, you and I have discussed this, and you know, I think there's a lot of interest in these public meetings. We'd like to do more of these on a regular basis. So, you know, what goals can be set over the next 6 months? What targets can be set over the next 6 months? What can we expect to be delivered? And let's see if we can come back and see how well we've met those targets. So I'd like the councillors to suggest some reasonable targets that we could aim for this year.
Okay, in summary, we're going to do that. We take a note of that, gentlemen, please, and please answer that question. I want to bring in a guy who's joined us late, but he has been in on the last meeting, and to be fair, I want to give him an opportunity to speak. John Fearn, are you there, John? John Fearn?
Yeah.
John, are you there?
Yes, Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, John, you want to contribute?
Yeah, we just had Kevin. I know, speaking to Tom, I can see the frustration, because I mean, absolutely fuming, listening to a lot of it. And I think all this would have died a death only for, now to be fair, I tackled Michael Savage a couple of nights pre-COVID in the Bridge Bar, and only for the likes of Michael, possibly, and well, definitely for Patrick and Gavin, this would have died a death. And I concur with Tom that even from the last meeting, and even over the years, Kevin, for 20 odd years, I think there must be another agenda as to why this hasn't got off the ground. There has to be another agenda as to why, I mean, certain parties are not putting the full political weight behind this and getting it done. Because like there's Clones, Monaghan, they're actually going to start refilling old canal beds and river beds because they want to have a water facility. We have that. We have a superb water facility. I saw an aerial shot of it last week. It's a fabulous place. We already have that all. And I mean, to get down to Craigavon, which is a landlocked place, it's beautiful down there. I went down there to get the second vaccine a few weeks ago. They have lovely boating and canals and running around to Oxford Island. Why Newry? Why we just can't get this off the ground? And I'm just hoping that Brian Cleveland doesn't have to rename his organisation Newry 2040, because I really commend the guys. I commend the guys that are standing by it and trying to push it through, but it must be so frustrating for them, because it's so frustrating for me and the likes of me sitting on the sidelines, Kevin.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Right. Okay. Let's move to our councillors, because there's quite a wee bit to get through. In summary, gentlemen, you've heard the question Brian has asked. You've heard John's concerns. You've heard Tom Moore. You've heard Jerry Brennan. You've heard our doctor tonight talking about mental health and people's well-being. Grania talking about the children in the community, and why is it taking so long? She made a suggestion tonight that it was ridiculous. The timescales were just not 6 years isn't good enough. You know, she talked about 18 months, and that was backed up by James McConville in his question as well. So let's go. First of all, we've got Gavin Malone there. So let's go with Gavin. In summary, Gavin, please, what have you learned tonight? What are you going to take with you? And hold on, finally, in July, when you have this in front of you in June, you're going to know phase one, you're going to know what's happening. What would you like to see? If we were sitting here in July now, what should be happening?
Well, can I start off, Kevin, by praising each and every person who has turned up to this meeting this evening. There's a serious determination on behalf of 2020, people like Grania Pal, Shirley, John Fern, everyone who's here, and we're going to be dogged in trying to achieve the objective as quickly as possible. With regards to the canal is so important to myself, and spending money in the canal as a tourist attraction for everyone, from canoes to everything. It's really, really important. There is serious issues. It's been a very slow, tedious process, but I think it's very important to be totally transparent. So when the consultation report comes back in the coming weeks, I think it's really important that we as councillors keep everyone updated, and no one is excluded. Everyone who has a view or concern is taken on board, and we as councillors then follow up on everyone's concerns. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to sit here and mislead everyone. I have only been a councillor for 2 years, so the 4 years previous to that there, I wasn't involved in. But I do agree with what Michael said earlier on. There has been movement this last 12 months. It's been slow, but there has undoubtedly been movement. I hope that the movement increases the tempo. And I agree with every single person who has made a comment tonight. They're all 100% right. And their concerns are very legitimate, Kevin, because this has been a tedious process and it needs to be bucked up as a matter of urgency.
Thank you. Thank you. Patrick Brown.
Thanks, Kevin. And I'll start by thanking you again for doing such a good job as chair as always, and Brian and other members of 2020 for organising, and also concur with Gavin, thanking everyone for being here tonight. Gavin's made me feel very old there, realising that this month I'll have been in council 7 years. So being around the block. I want to circle back to what Jerry was saying about the waterways, if that's okay, Kevin, because I didn't get a chance to come in.
Certainly, go ahead.
As you may know, I was in the centre of a bit of a press tit for tat with a member of another party on that. Jerry said a lot of things that I also hope that I covered when I spoke to this matter in committee off the record. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded when this was being discussed at the ERT committee. I'm not a member of that committee, but I went along as a guest. My honest opinion is that the economic assessment, as you've laid out, Jerry, only looked at the usage of the canals at a point in time and basically said, well, we're not getting very much activity at the moment, so we're probably not going to get any activity in the future, even with a lifting bridge. And they calculated a number for 60 years of what the previous activity had been, and then they just plunked on 3% inflation, which any economist will tell you is not how you calculate inflation. It's added cumulatively on an annual basis, but I digress. The problem with the economic assessment in a nutshell is that we didn't make a business case for how we could invest, as you're saying, in the canal and actually attract more water-based activity to that area. So we didn't make a case for why the investment in a lifting bridge made economic sense. One cursory glance at that economic assessment would tell you that it was putting a nail in the coffin of a lifting bridge if it had its way. And what we had at committee was Sinn Féin representatives tripping over themselves to propose and rubber stamp that economic assessment. And it was thanks to Gary Stokes and my own colleague Andy McMurray and other councillors who actually voted against that Sinn Féin proposal, got it looked at again. My personal opinion is we should have scrapped it all together and started from scratch and started with a business case. Now, I wasn't on the committee, so the outcome of the committee was that they would write a letter in support of a lifting bridge and send the economic assessment, which was de facto in support of a fixed bridge. I do think, as Brian said earlier, it's a bit of a schizophrenic position, but at least corporately we have come out in favour of a lifting bridge.
And can I point out there, to be fair, Sinn Féin are not here to answer that.
They're not. No, it has been back and forth from the press recently as well, so it's a matter of public record as well. If anyone wants to go back and read the minutes and so on. But coming back to what I want to see over the next year, Kevin, and I laid out Alliance Party stall on this at the last public meeting. We have an opportunity here where we have around the same sort of time a convergence of the design concept for the Albert Basin Park project and the outcome of the consultation for the rest of the regeneration project, the Civic Centre and the theatre and so on. Our position is that we need to radically rethink the civic centre and private office space component of that regeneration project. We need to scrap the 3 million for private office space altogether, and we need to radically scale back the proposed 12 million spend for the site behind the cathedral. We change the site, we go somewhere more suitable that will actually regenerate Newry. There are a number of sites suitable, Debenhams, William Goss's site, there's a couple of others that have been brought to me. And it would be a lot cheaper, and it would actually do more to regenerate the area. And it would also not deprive the cathedral of their parking. With the money that we would save from those changes, from making those changes within the city deal proposal, which, by the way, we have confirmed that we can make changes to the city deal, unlike what we've been told by council management. With the money that we would save from that, I believe that we should immediately ring fence that money in the capital programme for the park and make a real statement in this year's rates, not next year's, in this year's rates now, to get that in the capital programme, get that money ring fenced for the park and start moving things forward more quickly. Ultimately, in my opinion, this comes down to money. I've said it before, council needs to put its money where its mouth is.
Thank you. Thank you. Michael Savage.
Yes, Kevin, and again, I don't want to echo the sentiments of thanking everybody who's spoken tonight and spoken so eloquently and passionately and asked the necessary questions. I share their deep frustrations, but what I have done, some people have said, you know, what have you done? I've actually done things. I've acted. I've tried to push this on, as people have alluded to. But, you know, what we need to look at is where we are, where we're going, and when we're going to get there. And that's really what people are asking tonight. And where we are is a lot further on than we were 12 months ago, and that we are on the verge of getting our design concept, which I believe will be the launch pad for costings, for phasing, for planning. We're looking for funding, the appointment of a contractor, and work commencing, where we're on site and we've delivered at least phase 1 by 2023. We are at the point of no return in relation to this park, because councillors at this juncture will not allow it to happen. And there are risks, yes, in relation to everything that we do. There may be risks come out in the report of the concept design, but just like the issues and the risks that we had around what was going to or not going to go into the consultation document, we fought that. We put our foot down and we said no, and what we wanted was delivered. So whenever the councillors have been challenged to step up and hold management to account on this, and certain things have been talked about in relation to people actually doing the jobs they're paid to do, which is to act on what councillors tell them to do. You know, we have got to that stage. In some cases, you have to go around the houses to get it done, but we're at the stage now where it's very simple yes or no answers. Has the man who was given the job or the woman who was given the job to deliver a design based on the brief that we give them, have they stuck to the brief? And if not, then serious questions will be answered or will be asked. And you know, that when you talk about parking, etc., is very much something that we'll be watching very closely. But what I want to have as part of that discussion is that the stakeholder forum have as much of a say in relation to how we proceed with the phasing and what's seen as priorities and what input they want to put into what has been put forward in the design concepts. That's critical. And that's why I proposed that the stakeholder forum would be retained, because I knew we would come to this juncture. Have there been a lot of mistakes made along the way in this? Absolutely. Has there been a lot of delays, a lot of attitudes that were negative towards this? Absolutely. But what I can say is myself and my party colleague Gary Stokes and other people here on this call tonight have been resolute in getting this delivered. And it may not be within the timescale that people would have wanted. I logically, as somebody who came from the private sector, can't understand, as Grania has outlined, why something that could be delivered within a 2-year timescale has dragged on for 4 years. But you know something, I've had an education since 2017, since I went into the council. You know, sometimes you have to deal with the art of the possible. And I've been trying to work within the art of the possible to deliver where we are to date. In relation to what Patrick has said about other projects, I've raised my voice on these concerns that have been highlighted. And I've advocated very strongly that if we run into trouble in relation to some elements of the Newry regeneration scheme or part of the regeneration scheme, we should be looking at options of Plan B. And you know, we would be advocating strongly, depending on what comes back in the public consultation on that. And I don't want to talk too much on it because that's the run to the 31st of May, and it's right and proper that the local public, business community, parish and everybody else has their say, and that we get an authentic voice on the regeneration plans for Newry from the people who are going to be very much part and parcel of life in the city going forward in a new regenerated city. But look, I think that Newry will be transformed in 10 years' time. I think we'll all look back at this. We'll probably sit over a pint, as John said, in the Bridge Bar and talk about the rows and ructions we had to try and get it where it is. But in 10 years' time, Newry will be a transformed place. And I feel that we all need to put the shoulder to the wheel now and deliver it. I think we need to talk up the schemes that we want to deliver. Newry people are no shrinking violets. They will certainly make their voices heard, and when they're asked to, they will. And I've no doubt consultations that went out previously in the park and likewise in the regeneration scheme, the people of Newry will have their say. And us as political representatives who are there on a mandate that the people put us there, we're here to listen and make sure that those are reflected in any decisions that we take. So what I can say is I'm determined to get to where we need to be as soon as possible, as soon as we possibly can. But I want to bank each win as we get it within the art of possible. And I believe that we will deliver the park. I think the park will be something that we'll all be very proud of when it's delivered, and something that we will add to in generations to come, because it'll be a space that the community and the public will own.
Thanks, Michael.
This all comes back to a vision that Newry 2020 had, and their tenacity in sticking with this. And we don't agree on everything, but what we agree on is we want to deliver a park for Newry, and sometimes we have to do a bit of digging about to try and get to where we want to do. And I know that leads to frustration, but we're very much on the same page with everybody here tonight. We want to see the park delivered, and we'll do all in our gift to do that over the coming months.
Grania, Paul, Grania, if you're still with us, hopefully you are. Grania, the people will have their say. That seems to be the message. But will they have their say in time for you?
Kevin, just before the pandemic happened, we had called a crisis meeting in Newry with loads of different stakeholders involved in working with children and young people, from the Education Board to crisis intervention and loads of different groups, because we at that point had a big issue with our children and young people with mental health issues. And that was pre-pandemic. The situation now is much worse. In Newry, collectively, we have neglected our children and young people. We have a responsibility to ensure that every child reaches their full potential, regardless of our politicians, community representatives, parents, teachers, or whatever. We all have a responsibility to have a say and make sure things are good for our children. I welcome the comments from our politicians tonight, and I fully understand that they are working as hard as they can. But I also think to expect that we might be waiting another 4 or 5 years for a park is totally unacceptable. The children and young people of Newry need a park now. They needed it 10 years ago. It's totally unacceptable. I don't think the council realise that the council officials are elected by the people. The council workers work for the people of Newry. We are the people who should be telling them what we want. And the people of Newry have spoken very clearly and very loudly. We want a park. We need a park. Our children deserve a park. One of the council's mayor recently, or the chairperson, recently launched a Get Active campaign. Get out, get active, fresh air. It's great for your well-being and mental health. Where do the people of Newry go to get active? They have nowhere. In 2021, it is absolutely unacceptable that we have no city park. Now, we've listened to the excuses, and we've listened to all the timelines, and we've listened to everybody say this, that, and the other. But the bottom line is we are failing our children and young people. We have a rising crisis. We have the highest rate of youth suicide in the whole of the UK. That is not acceptable. It's time for action. It's time for change. And if our council, our elected representatives, aren't able to take control of the council officials and get them to do their job, then something seriously needs to happen. I welcome the input from all the councils that are here tonight, and I understand their frustrations, and I understand how hard they're working. But to be honest, it's not good enough. It's not good enough for a child to miss out on an essential part of their development. We are damaging the children today, and we're damaging the next generation. Children need to play. And we can see the impact. Newry and Moran has one of the highest levels of play deprivation in the whole of the UK. And we've known that for years, and yet we're still at this situation where we haven't done anything to address it. It's totally non-acceptable. It's time for change, it's time for action, and please, no more excuses.
Thank you, Grania. Thank you. Let's go to our doctor for the final word, as it were. Dr. Shirley Forshaw, hopefully you're still with us, and our well-being, our green spaces are essential for young people, not only young people, but older people like myself as well. We all need to get out and stretch our legs and clear our head on occasions. In summary, you've listened tonight to our councillors, you've listened to our contributors. What's your final opinion on this tonight?
Well, I 100% agree with Grania there. The epidemic of mental health problems in all age groups is just horrific. The attendances with mental health problems, I've never seen the like of it before. And one thing that struck me during the last year, a lot of our patients, when they come down to see us, we tell them, you know, we'll ring you when you come down. So you're not waiting outside, standing outside, we'll bring you in from the car. And I was struck by the number who actually don't have cars in Newry. Those people aren't like many of us on the call tonight who can pop in their car and go to Kilbrony or up to Slieve Gullion. Really, Newry is where they can go with their kids, and there aren't too many nice places that you can take your kids in Newry for exercise or play. So I really think we're doing a disservice to our young people, but also to all generations really, because really mental health, getting outside, being active is very, very important. But if your mental health's not good, your physical health deteriorates, your increased risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes. By reducing that amount, it's actually going to reduce the strain on our health service. You know, our politicians talk an awful lot about supporting the health service. There's all this worry about attendances at A&E and secondary care. If we could actually reduce the number of people that need to end up there by looking after them and preventing them getting illness in the first place, we can make such a difference for the future. I think, you know, I'm really shocked. I know the councillors on the call tonight have been very good and are very good to be here. It's the ones that aren't here that I'm concerned about. I really cannot understand why anyone wouldn't want a park in Newry. And I think really, you know, as Grania said, the children are definitely suffering. A lot of kids don't have lovely spaces that they don't even gardens that they can go into. I just can't believe that it's happening. And then it does impact in general practice at the minute in A&E. We are snowed under. I know you mightn't think we are, but we really, really are. We've never worked as hard. The amount of problems that people are coming to us, the amount of alcohol that people are drinking, the amount of excessive eating because they're so depressed and so down. They just don't feel they can go anywhere to get involved in things. So I think the park, from an economic point of view, okay, I know it's going to bring money into Newry, but I think there's more important. The health of our local population is much more important. And I'm really thankful for Brian for inviting me here tonight. So I just hope that things can be escalated, because a couple of years' time is too late. We have an emergency now and we need to do something about it now. And you've got a window, and this means like within the next couple of months, you need to get things moving. And a 1.5 million to me seems a very small amount of money when you can actually reduce so many millions of referrals to the secondary care in the future, or even suicide rates. Yeah. So thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. You heard it from the doctor, guys. Your health is your wealth, and certainly an open space somewhere in the city for us all would be a big, big plus. So let's get the job done. I have to thank everybody tonight for joining us. Patrick Brown from the Alliance Party, a big thank you to you. Gavin Malone, who's an independent councillor in Newry. Michael Savage from the SDLP. Dr. Shirley Forshaw is a GP in Newry, thank you. Grania Powell from Sticky Fingers, thank you very much. And of course, our host tonight, Brian Cleland from 2020, doing it again for us. It's been my pleasure to be involved tonight. I too want a park. I want a park for everyone to enjoy for the betterment of Newry. Councillors, you were brave enough to come on tonight and talk to everybody, and you were very honest in everything you had to say, and we appreciate that. It's just a pity some of your other colleagues didn't join us on the call tonight. However, that's the end of our meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let's see what happens over the coming months. And no doubt 2020 will be inviting you back in July or August to tell us how it all went down. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.